Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening. So what are we going to talk about tonight? Well, I just want to touch on a story at the very beginning of the live stream on what's happening in Venice. Jeff Bezos is getting married to his wife, or his fiancée at the moment, and it's going to be a big event in Venice, and not everyone in Venice is happy about that. Of course, we're going to talk about what's happening with the welfare bill. Philp has attempted to become a sort of Batman of his own, and a few other stories as well. So let's start off with this one from Venice. It says here, celebrities converge on Venice for Bezos Sanchez wedding gala. So let me show you this clip. Okay. So the people of Venice are not too happy about the fact that Jeff Bezos and his fiancée are having their wedding in the city, because it creates massive amount of disruption. Generally, there have been other celebrity weddings in the past, but nothing to this extent. I think it's costing about $30 million to have this wedding in Venice, and they've closed off most of the city. I believe he's booked up a huge number of hotels, so normal people can't go into these hotels, can't stay in these hotels. So it's created a massive amount of disruption. Now, the mayor of the city, I believe, the municipality, the people who are in charge, the council, in a sense, they're very happy about this because it's more money. They're always looking for more money. So there's a conflict between the hoteliers, the tour operators, or the tourist wing of it, including the city, and the residents, the people who actually live there. And Venice is generally a disruptive city most of the year. There are periods where it's a little bit quieter, but it's always full of tourists. And it's become something of a Disneyland in a sense. People have been asking me, well, why doesn't it expand? It can't expand because it's built on islands. So the people who live there are considering leaving because it's very expensive to live there. The cost of living is much higher than any other part of the region. And a lot of the properties are now being bought up by very rich people from around the world, from China, from Arab countries, from the United States, from Russia. A lot of Russians have bought properties in Venice as well, and these people buy these properties to visit once a year or something, or just to speculate. And this has driven out a lot of the residents. A lot of the people who were born and lived their lives in Venice can no longer stay there. It's a sort of weird gentrification that has taken place, and more of this is creating, like these weddings, is creating a massive amount of disruption. Let me see if I can see the results of our poll. It doesn't show the results of the poll. Okay. But I think a majority of you said you're not happy with the results of the changes to the benefit system. So let's move on to that story next.
I toil on this, the third climb down in a month. The government released a panicked rewrite to its welfare reform bill at midnight last night, wheeling out a pre-recorded clip from the newfound rebel-in-chief, now giving the nod to what she called a good and workable compromise.
Well, I think this is a good deal. It's a big change since last week. Massive changes to ensure that the most vulnerable people are protected in terms of their personal independence payments and the health element of universal credit, and crucially involving disabled people themselves in the design of future benefit changes.
All colleagues want to get this right, and so do I.
Treasury Chair Meg Hillier isn't what the whips might call a usual suspect, But her amendment to block the bill and its projected £5 billion worth of savings got the support of 126 MPs, enough to spell defeat at the vote next Tuesday. In the midnight letter sent around Westminster WhatsApp groups, the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions said all of those currently receiving personal independence payments, which help disabled people with extra living costs, would remain, quote, within the system, with tighter eligibility requirements for new claimants only, starting from 2026.
So it's a two-tiered system. So people who are already on the system, people who are already in the system will be okay, but anyone joining in a year's time or over a year's time, they'll be frigged.
All existing claimants and future claimants meeting the severe conditions criteria, it said, will have their incomes protected, meaning the government won't cut the sickness payments they previously argued incentivise people to claim long-term sickness benefits over unemployment benefits.
What I think is important about the changes we've introduced is they will make sure existing people aren't affected. I know there has been real anxiety and concern, even though 9 out of 10 people currently on PIP wouldn't be affected. There has been great anxiety. We've listened to that. We're protecting existing...
You're not listening to the anxiety of the people who are disabled. You're not listening to people on PIP. You're only doing this because of backbenchers. It's not you listening, it's the backbenchers that were listening. The backbenchers listening to their constituents saying, hey, what the hell is going on? You're supposed to be there to protect us. Why aren't you doing something to protect us? So, of course, the government is moving because of the backbench rebellion, not because they grew a heart. It's not like they actually listen. They were supposed to listen to the disabled, to organizations representing the most vulnerable, and they decided not to. They said, we're going full steam ahead. And then, because of this rebellion, they decided, oh, we better not do that because we may not get this bill through. And if we don't get it through, it's extremely embarrassing for the Prime Minister. You know, or he'd have to rely on the Conservatives to get it through. And the Conservatives would be extracting concessions of their own. Or they'd vote against it. So either way, it would be a disaster politically. So there's a bit of a climb down because they realize we can't push this through. It reminds me of the Rwanda scheme. The Conservatives had the Rwanda scheme. It also reminds me of a similar scheme in Italy where politicians decide a policy and then after check to see if it's going to work. It's like, why don't you check to see if it's going to work and then announce the policy? Get all your ducks in a row and then say, okay, we should go ahead with this policy. But instead what they did was, let's go with this policy and then check to see if it's going to have an impact on the disabled. And of course, the disabled and organizations representing them and MPs who are standing up for them said, no, you can't do this. Like, why didn't they check with all of this first? The reason I believe they didn't do it is because Morgan McSweeney is deciding policy, it seems. And he doesn't give a shit, I presume, about the disabled. And he's surrounding himself with people who don't give a shit about the disabled. And it's just, well, we just push through this policy. Don't worry, there won't be a sufficient rebellion. Or we can, issue a 3-line whip. Or we can use whatever tools. Or we can threaten them or whatever. But it didn't work this time. And it's good that it didn't work.
Claimants, but we're making changes for the future so those who can work get support and those who can't are protected.
The government said it would consult with disability groups over stricter eligibility for new PIP claimants in 2026. Claimants that charities say are now at a disadvantage.
And there's a risk that this is going to create.
I just want to say thank you to the people who've popped on. Hello from South Florida. Great to have you on. Laura, great to see you. And thanks, Suzanne, for that kind comment.
2 different tiers of welfare support for disabled people experiencing the same condition and experiencing the same level of costs as each other, but being provided with totally different support.
Today's reversal has left the Chancellor with what the government says is a £1.5 billion shortfall, although economists at the Resolution Foundation say the true figure is double that.
So what this means is the government will really have to think hard before the autumn statement around how the Chancellor meets her fiscal rules.
Wealth tax, introduce a wealth tax to cover that black hole. Brian, thank you so much for that super chat. Max Sweeney, give me one reason I shouldn't sack you. The striptease you did. Here's the tape. It'd be a shame if the tabloids found it a striptease. Thanks, Brad, but it's probably true, or something of that kind. Thanks a lot.
Obviously got a suite of options available to her, tax and spending, but it is clear that with these changes there will be billions of pounds to make up.
Look, I have taken...
Look, she could... The Chancellor could have done what European Union is doing, European countries are doing when it comes to defence, for example. They have exempted defence from borrowing. The Chancellor could do that. She's talking about borrowing money for defence, talking about taking money from the overseas aid budget. But you could exempt defence spending from the budget, from borrowing. And that would free you up a great deal. But she's not doing that. Why is she not doing that? Like, I can't think of any political party that would be against that. Like, even the Conservatives would be like, they would grumble a bit, but the Conservatives are not going to be against defence spending. Thank you so much for sending people in this direction. Turn Left, and if you're not already following Turn Left Media, do check them out. A great channel for anyone who's. It's important that you go in the other direction as well. So the next time I'll see about sending some people in their direction. Thanks a lot.
Tough decisions.
Tough choices now.
Tough choices won't just stop there.
Tough choices have become a
Why can't tough choices be like a wealth tax? Is a wealth tax... This is a question I'd love to ask. Is a wealth tax a tough choice or an easy choice? Because how would you respond? Well, it's a tough choice to tax the wealthy. Okay, then it's a good choice. Like, it's a good decision. Or it's an easy choice. Then an easy choice should be one that you would take, on a Monday morning without even thinking. Which is it, a tough choice or an easy choice?
Worn adage of this government, soon to celebrate its anniversary, but with so many U-turns in so little time, 3 in the last month alone, some say it seems more like a government on the run. Okay. I think when it comes to U-turns, I've said before, the U-turns are not a problem if the U-turn is presented in a logical and sound way, in the sense that if you come out and you say, look, we made a decision, it was wrong, we're U-turning because it's the right thing to do. We've listened to the people affected. We think it was a mistake. We're sorry, and we U-turn. I think most people would be willing to agree with that and willing to accept an apology or accept the U-turn as something legitimate and as something heartfelt. But if it's you can't do it all the time. You can't do too many of them, because then you start to look like you're not in control. And it's not a good look if you are a leader with a massive majority. Boris Johnson had an 80-seat majority. Labour have a much bigger majority than that. So, you shouldn't be U-turning that much. You need to get the policies right in the first place, so you don't have to U-turn. Laura, thank you so much for that super chat. Very kind of you, and great to see you from southern Florida. You have my sympathies living in Florida. No, it's a beautiful state, but I know your governor is not. He's not the best. Let me put it that way. Thanks for that. Love your Trump MAGA videos. I post them on Facebook all the time. So glad you popped onto my YouTube. Oh, thank you very much. You're very kind. And solidarity with you guys in the States, because I know you're going through a difficult time. But hopefully it will end soon and Trump will be out and normality will resume. Thanks for that.
I'm joined by John McTernan, formerly Tony Blair's political secretary. John, thank you for joining us. Firstly, a 12:27 a.m. announcement appeasing furious backbenchers, the third U-turn now in a month. Are these the actions of a government in control?
It's definitely the action of the government that are listening to its backbenchers. And in the end, if you can't deliver your own backbenchers to change things, you can't really control the Commons. And I think it is a government who have decided Well, they heard the message finally, haven't they? That this was unacceptable from the minute it was first floated to take £5 billion out of disability benefits. £5 billion, that's £1,000.
Sorry, I need to reinforce this point once again. It's not so much that they're U-turning because they realised the policy was bad. They're U-turning because they realise that the backbenchers could stop the policy. They could end it. End the bill with a wrecking amendment. So it's not so much that they're listening to the disabled and charities because they could have, but they decided not to. It's they're listening to their backbench MPs who are saying, you need to stop this.
A year from 5 million people. It was always going to hurt people, and Labour backbenchers were probably never going to vote for it because it's not really very Labour.
You said that he's been listening to backbenchers. I mean, until Wednesday, he was describing this as noises off. He's not really listening to them, is he? He's forced into this position.
What you do is much more important than what you say. There was no doubt earlier this week that the government were preparing for a...
Okay, but that's fine. I understand. It's more important what you do than what you say. But the public listen to what you say. And what you say remains in their minds. Now, until what you do takes place. But I really don't understand these unforced errors. Like, why didn't they check beforehand? Okay, we want to make these changes. Let's run it past the most vulnerable in society, charities, organizations that represent the disabled. Let's check with our backbench MPs. You know, I don't know if he went with a focus group instead and said, look, let's put out a focus group and see how they respond. Because the problem with the focus group is it's sort of garbage in, garbage out problem. If the focus group is selected from people who, you know, are in the red wall or something, who don't give a shit about the disabled or people on benefits and are likely to be more inclined to vote for reform, then you're going to get very bad data. You're going to get an idea of, oh, well, nobody cares about this and go full steam ahead. And then obviously that backfired. So you need to, this is how they're approaching policy, just focus group everything. If that's their approach, it's going to be, focus groups are okay to get a general feeling of a leader or policies in general, but it's not good to focus group every policy or every approach, because then you're going to end up with really bad data and make mistakes like this.
Compromise, they called it a conversation at one point. You never admit you're going to change until you change. Always in politics, you should change fast. Change as soon as you know you're going to have to change direction. And it's been known since the May elections, I think, that this was not going to be able to be passed in Parliament. And so what's needed, we're nearly a year into this government. What's needed is a more strategic approach to all the questions about domestic politics. Winter fuel payments too expensive. Now they've been restored. Now they're going to be restored. Disability cuts, they were going to happen. Now they're going to be watered down. Two-child limit, too expensive to lift, but probably going to be lifted. There needs to be a domestic policy theory, something that says we're doing all these things for a reason. And the bad handling of these things is one thing, but it was always a bad...
Okay, but why is it always the poor that have to suffer? Like, I could understand if he was pushing forward with a policy, because if he went along with something like, we're going to tax the wealthy, and then he received a huge amount of pushback from the media or whatever, I could understand a U-turn there. Now, it wouldn't be a good thing to do, but I could understand a U-turn there. But that would be something I think a lot of people would get behind. And you could see, well, it's in line with Labour policies and Labour ideals. But this isn't in line with Labour ideals. This would be like the Tories saying we're going to throw pensioners under a bus. Well, maybe they have in the past, but, be really open about it. Or we're going to tax the rich. No, this is not Tory ethos. So it's not in line with Labour thinking. So why it was pushed in the first place doesn't make any sense.
Bad decision. There was never a way to handle it properly.
You mentioned a couple of those U-turns there, including winter fuel payments and perhaps...
Well said, Suzanne. We should stop calling them benefits. They're entitlements.
The two-child benefit cap there. Do you think this spells tax rises?
Look, I think there will need to be tax rises. They don't need to be tax rises that break the fiscal rules the government stood on in the election. They don't need to be tax rises that hit families or businesses. You could target gambling, online gambling, in the way that Gordon Brown suggested. So tax something that's actually not a public good tax that an extra. Or you could tax the banks. I've always said banks have no friends. So find things that are unpopular or bad and tax them. And that's a way to kind of bring some balance into the budget.
Keir Starmer talks a big talk about making tough choices, but then we've seen him reverse on several of those. Is he a pushover?
Look, I think the language of tough choices, hard choices, you understand the rhetorical force of them.
Okay, it's not that he's a pushover, it's that he doesn't have any vision. He's like an empty suit. He's like an empty vessel. And I think he has people like Morgan McSweeney who are pouring in the policies. He doesn't understand. Somebody made a joke about him that he was like, he was put in the driver's seat of a driverless train and told that he was driving the train. And I think there is, see, the people who wanted to win the election decided, let's go with Starmer because he's somebody who doesn't really have any ideology, or doesn't seem to have any ideology. Now, he probably has his own beliefs. He'd like to, I don't know, do X, Y, and Z, but we don't hear very much about that. That's not front and center. It's not, like, what I'm talking about is if you go back to 2019, what was Boris Johnson's goal? Get Brexit done. What was Nigel Farage's goal? Get out of the European Union. These were visions that they had. We can go back, Jeremy Corbyn, the vision to deal with wealth or income inequality, to level the playing field, these types of policies, these types of visions, a fairer society, a focus on everyone, not just on the few. What was it? For all, not the few, or for the most, not the few. So there was a vision there. Starmer doesn't have a vision, or if he does, he's hiding it very well, and that's part of the problem here. So because you don't have a vision and you're just like a wind vane, well, then people will realize, well, what are we actually voting for? Because people will vote for a policy that's damaging to them or that's uncomfortable if they believe there's some end goal in sight. People were voting for the Conservative Party because they thought, well, we'll get Brexit done. I'll vote for the Tories. I'll vote for Boris Johnson. I don't like Boris Johnson. He's a bit of a clown. I don't like the Conservatives, but I'm going to vote for them because they're going to get Brexit done. That was the vision. What are people voting for when it comes to Starmer? Because at the last election, the last general election, of course, they were voting against the Tories. But you can't build your entire party on we're not the Tories, because that's not going to work in the long term. It worked last time. We're not the Tories, vote for us. Vote for change. Okay, but what does that look like? So you need to have something. It's not like Tony Blair's, what was his, things are going to get better. Okay, you're tired of the Tories, John Major and all those who came before. We're going to be something new. We're going to be something fresh, something cool, something sexy. And people voted for that. You need to have something, and we don't see a vision. Honestly, I'd love to sit down with Keir Starmer, and this is something, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent just for a moment, but this is something that he could use to convince people of what his policies are, what his ideas are. Why doesn't he do a podcast? I'm not talking about podcast with other politicians. I'm not talking about a podcast with, mainstream media. I'm talking about a podcast with somebody like myself or Phil or somebody else who's online. I'm not saying I would do it, and I'm not saying I'm expecting him to do it, but he could put his position across. He could tell people, this is my vision. He could be challenged on it, and he could push back. But I think it would actually benefit him a great deal. But he doesn't want to do that, or the people around him don't want him to do that, because they're no longer in control of the narrative.
An attempt to say this isn't easy. I would prefer it if the government were clear about blaming the people who made this so hard. The reason we're in a difficult situation in terms of the markets and borrowing to invest is that Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng and the Tory party, Tory government, crashed the economy. If you don't make a villain of your opponents, you end up being made a villain by your own actions. So just claiming and complaining that things are difficult isn't enough, and then to say, look, I'm being hard in this difficult situation. You need to be Labour in every situation if you're going to be a Labour government.
And you think that some of his decisions have been fundamentally un-Labour?
I think trying to take £4,000, nearly £4,000 away from 1 million people with disabilities isn't in line with Labour's values, no, and that's why it's going to have to be withdrawn.
And more than 120 of his MPs didn't want these.
See, the damage has already been done, because the narrative has been set that Labour are not on the side of poor people, not on the side of the disabled. They can win those people back, but you need to do something. See, honestly, I don't understand who is it Morgan McSweeney who's responsible for all of this disaster? Is it Sue Gray that came before? Are these the people who are pushing these types of policies, who don't understand the impact they're going to have? It's nonsense thinking. Anyway, guys, I want to move on to another story here related to this. So Liz Kendall, sometimes there is strength in listening. Liz Kendall defends welfare U-turn. First of all, there was not going to be any U-turn. We're going to stick, it's a difficult decision. We're going to stick with it. But then they decided, no, we're actually going to. Obviously, this is because of the backbenchers, not because they're listening. Anyway, Liz Kendall has defended the government's welfare U-turn, saying sometimes there is strength in listening. The embattled Work and Pension Secretary said positive changes have come about as a result of the crisis talks with senior Labour backbenchers who are poised to vote against planned cuts to disability benefits next week. However, she would not guarantee the bill would pass amid criticism from some MPs the changes don't go far enough. The welfare concessions follow a U-turn over winter cuts to winter fuel and decisions to launch a grooming inquiry. Asked how the government could be trusted, Ms. Kendall said, sometimes there's strength in listening. I really believe that to be the case, that you can end up on the right position when you talk to all of those with knowledge and experience. And actually, if you want decisions to be the right ones and to last for generations to come, I believe that's how you make the right changes. But why didn't you do this in the first place? The concessions include exempting existing personal independence claimants, PIP, from the strict new criteria, while the Universal Credit Health top-up will only be cut and frozen for new applications. Once again, it's going to create it's not a good policy, because it's creating a two-tier system where new people coming in will be treated differently to those who are already on it. How is that something positive? See, the response from the Conservatives is, well, the welfare bill is going through the roof. Okay, why is the welfare bill going through the roof? It's going through the roof because you did not implement measures to protect the NHS. You did not fund the NHS correctly. You went ahead with Brexit, which made it more difficult for the NHS to access the workers it needs. You imposed a visa system, which makes it more difficult for the care sector to get the workers they need. So more and more people are waiting on the NHS waiting list for treatment. And until they get the treatment, they're claiming sick benefit or entitlement. Yeah, and many people who are on PIP are benefiting from this support to help them into work. Like the Tories are like, we need to cut it. We're not going to cut it for people who need it, but then they don't specify who needs it. But they said the bill needs to come down. The Tories, as I said today, are like, arsonists turning up at the fire and saying, let me show you how to work a fire extinguisher. It's over for Labour. I don't think it's over. It's a crisis that they didn't need to deal with. And if they're dealing with a crisis like this, they're helping other parties. They're helping the Green Party. They're helping Reform. They're helping the SNP in Scotland. They're helping Plaid Cymru in Wales. Hi, Sarah. They're not helping themselves because it changes what people believe the Labour Party to be, and I think that's detrimental to the party. Oh, guys, we're about halfway through the stream, so I'm just going to take a short comedy moment. Hope you enjoy this, and we'll be back in just a jiffy with more, maybe serious stuff. It involves Trump at some stage, so it's not that serious. It can't be that serious. Hope you enjoy this.
A group of scientists, artists and influencers have begged the Nobel Prize Committee to give Donald Trump a special prize immediately before he accidentally blows up the world or something. Our flattery, diplomacy and give the guy a medal already correspondent Jonathan Goodenough has more. Yes, that's right, hundreds of talented and notable people, as well as several TikTokers, have urged the Norwegian gong givers to produce a special award for the President of the United States that is bigger, more garish and more golden than anyone produced in the past, on the off chance that this might get him to calm down a bit. And would that work? Well, it's long been clear that Donald Trump is desperate to win the Nobel Peace Prize, largely because Barack Obama won it in 2009, essentially for not being George W. Bush anymore, right? In fact, Trump's whole presidency can be seen as a backlash against Obama's term in office, because he had the temerity to make fun of him at a dinner, be a black man, and most importantly, not be Donald Trump, okay? And in fact, this whole Iran crisis can be traced back to Trump withdrawing from the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal that was working, according to most experts, but had to be destroyed because it was Obama's achievement. Maybe if they'd renamed it the Trump deal, he'd have been okay with it. That is almost certainly the case, which begs the question, was it worth renaming Obamacare Trump Tonic? So what has he done this week? Well, in just over 2 days, he's bombed Iran, declared success, declared a ceasefire, then run a victory lap, seemingly without checking that anyone else had agreed. Because in his mind, nobody else really exists? It's a strong supposition. Meanwhile, Israel declared a ceasefire while literally launching missiles. Iran said that they hadn't been asked about a ceasefire, then fired some missiles at a US base in Qatar that deliberately missed. Then Qatar said they reserved the right to respond, and David Lammy called for restraint. From who? Everyone. Including Israel and the US. Good one. Oh, you're being serious? No. So why was Iran attacked? Well, because Netanyahu's wanted to bomb Iran for decades, and he knew that Iran was weak and that Trump wouldn't stop him, and he also wanted to draw the world's attention away from the horror show that is Gaza. And then when Trump saw what was happening, he thought bombing Iran sounded cool, and he wanted to get in on the act too. Oh, Jonathan, I don't think you got the updated script. Oh, sorry, yeah, do you want to ask that again? So why was Iran attacked? To stop it from making a nuclear weapon. Was it about to make one? That depends on who you listen to. Most experts who agree they were some way off developing one and mainly enriching uranium to build leverage for future talks, or Donald Trump, who just had a sort of vibe that they were. So what happens now? Unclear. It seems that many countries around the world will probably conclude that the only way to avoid being attacked by the US and Israel in the future is to not have a nuclear weapons program, or to develop one really quickly in secret. Are negotiations off the table? Not necessarily, but you have to ask how effective they'll be when Israel seems in no mood to talk, and Trump seems to have the attention span of a gadfly with ADHD. What's been Keir Starmer's response to all this? He's called for de-escalation, with about as much success as a tiny child wandering into a dance tent at a festival and asking everyone to keep things down a bit. Thank you, Jonathan. Oh, Trump's just said fuck. Time to get to the bunkers. Thank you, Jonathan. Next up, as a large rebellion looms against the government's planned cuts to personal independence payments, we ask, after the winter fuel debacle, is Keir Starmer counting on disabled people being less likely to vote than pensioners, especially if you've just taken away their wheelchairs?
Yes, probably not. Moving on. Oh my goodness, yes, I wanted to show you this clip, guys. So Chris Philp, you know Chris Philp, he used to be the policing minister and now he is the shadow home secretary, I believe, under Kemi Badenoch. So he has decided to follow in the footsteps of the other failed leader of the failed candidate to be leader of the Conservative Party, Robert Jenrick, who was playing a bit of Batman recently. Remember, he was jumping over turnstiles to arrest, well, try to engage in citizens' arrests of people who didn't pay their ticket, pay for their transport. Anyway, this is what Chris Philp has been doing.
My name is Chris. I'm a member of Parliament here in the UK. Would you like to learn a bit about what you're doing here and what's going on? How come you're living here in tents? Take it easy. Take it easy. Whereabouts are you from originally? Romania. Romania. And you travel in Bulgaria. Are some of the people here involved in begging, or do they work?
Where are you getting the money for the beer then?
Racist, no respect. It's not racist to ask questions.
You would prefer it if people didn't know what you're up to.
No respect to racist. It's not racist
because we got pictures of you gambling, because we got pictures of you drinking, because we got pictures of you begging. It's not racist. Don't put your hands on me.
You shouldn't take the Shadow Home Secretary and the Daily Express to get them to basically do their job. Legislation that gives the police powers to move people on, and the government, Angela Rayner, is going to repeal that legislation imminently without putting any replacement legislation on the statute books.
Look, for me, these people, It's not okay. It's racist.
It's not. Honestly,
no
it's
respect,
not.
No
it's
respect.
It's not racist to raise issues like this.
These people.
It's not. You have the right to work in the UK.
Yes.
You got papers.
Yes.
I mean, we've met people at this site, kind of 15-year-old.
Okay. You know, he's like trying to play this some sort of superhero or something. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to challenge these people. You know, he's a member of parliament. He's a former policing minister. Like, if he had an issue with these people, surely he understands what you need to do is you need to go to the police. Call the police if these people are committing a crime. You don't turn up and harass them. As a member of frigging parliament, you're not some sort of guy, you know, a YouTuber with a, you know, with a selfie stick turned with the camera turned around, and you're like trying to harass people on the street, you know, for clicks and likes. It's like, you're a frigging member of parliament. You're supposed to follow the procedures. You know, you go to the police. If these people are committing a crime, you go to the police. But see, this is not about the crime. This is about clicks and likes. This is how far the Conservative Party have fallen. That they're running around looking for something to record to stick on social media. They're like TikTokers. They're like YouTubers. It's pathetic. You know, whatever these people are doing, if they're engaged in criminal behavior, okay. If they're breaking the law, okay. But there's a procedure. You go to the police. You don't go there and interview these people and harass them and tell them you need to move on because I'm a member of parliament. It doesn't matter whether you're a member of parliament or not. You're supposed to follow the rules. You know, once again, this is like dessert. This is wonderful for the right wing. They love this. They love people like Robert Jenrick or Chris Philp or whoever going into these places and challenging these people and, you know, calling them out and getting into a bit of a fight. They love that. But just take a step back and say, okay, why is Chris Philp doing this? Like, what does he hope to achieve? Obviously, it's clicks and likes, because he probably saw that video with Robert Jenrick that got, 14 million views on TikTok, on Twitter. 14 million views. I hope he had it monetized. But it's like, what are you doing? You're not a YouTuber. You're not a TikToker. You're a politician. You're a member of parliament. You're supposed to be representing your constituents, not going out on the street making viral videos. You know, I think it really started with Nigel Farage, I think they're trying to copy what Farage was doing. Do you remember a few years ago, Farage would roll up in his chauffeur-driven Range Rover to a hotel, then go inside, try to get inside, try to film inside, try and question people either inside or outside, then get pushed out because security say you don't have the right to be here. This is private property, or this is the property of the Home Office, or this is whatever. You don't have permission to film here because it's inside, and you don't have permission to be inside at all. And then, of course, there'd be a bit of a back and forth, and Farage would leave, and then he'd film himself in his Range Rover talking about how terrible everything was. I think Chris Philp and Robert Jenrick have seen this and said, hey, I want to do something like that. You know, I could represent my constituents. I could take calls and do surgeries, listening to people's problems about what's happening to the local hospital or whatever. But that's boring shit. You know, this is much more exciting, and it helps me in my ultimate goal, probably to become leader of the Conservative Party. How did the sperm and egg end up in the same? Thanks, Brad. Oh my goodness. Fisher-Price binoculars. The White Cliffs of Dover. Yes, well said. Did you try painting over the Mickey Mouse murals? That's a good one. Yeah, he should try that. That's a real vote winner as well. But what a charade. Like, once again, you're not a TikToker. You're not a YouTuber. You're a frigging politician. You're a member of parliament. It's not your job to go around harassing people or getting in their faces for clicks and likes. You're supposed to be doing your job, and your job can be quite boring, I'm sorry to say, but you signed up to that. You knew what you were getting into. Your job is to ask questions on behalf of your constituents in the House of Commons, and of course conduct surgeries where people come in or they call you up and they say, hey, I have this problem, can you do something about it? It's not very sexy, it's not very interesting, it's not exciting, it doesn't get the blood pumping, doesn't get the adrenaline running through your veins, but it's your job. Many people don't like their jobs and they go and do something else. Maybe Chris Philp should, I don't know, become a full-time TikToker or something. I just wanted to show that because while, it's presented as something, at least he's standing up to these people. He's going out there on the street and reporting, but that's not his job. If there's a problem, he needs to go to the police. If there's a crime committed, his job as a citizen, and certainly as a member of parliament, is to report it to the authorities. But that's not cool. It's not so cool going into the police station and with dramatic music and camera move, shaky cam and everything, with him like filling out a form. It's like, was it 27 Market Street or 28? I don't remember. It was next to the church. That's not sexy. It's not cool. Anyway, from one idiot to another idiot.
He's the defense secretary, but he's on the attack.
You want to call it destroyed, you want to call it defeated, you want to call it obliterated, choose your word. This was an historically successful attack.
Pete Hegseth's fuming over claims US airstrikes on Iran were of limited success, and he has the media in his sights.
Because you, and I mean specifically you, the press, because
it's always a good luck when a politician is angry with the press, when you actually haven't presented any evidence. See, it's different if you're angry with the press for misleading the public, but you have built your entire campaign, like I'm talking about the Republican Party, on lies. So you don't get to turn around and try and claim, hey, you need to be honest. It's like, we have lied to people from the very beginning, and now we're upset that perhaps some misinformation got out. Now, it's probably not misinformation, because how are we supposed to know? Because we don't have any journalists on the ground. We don't have anyone investigating the site that was destroyed. We have to trust the Trump administration. Like, who in their right mind would trust the Trump administration? Cavan Lad, thanks so much for that peach. I think it's a peach. Thank you so much for that. Like, honestly, like, do even MAGA people trust the Trump administration? Like, they would say, well, I don't care if he's lying, because it's about getting something through, or it's about achieving some goal. So why would somebody from MAGA, obviously the defense secretary, why would he be upset that people are not relaying his lies?
Because you cheer against Trump so hard. It's like in your DNA and in your...
What the hell happened to the world? Like, we used to have... Please, I hope that we return to some sort of normality after this fiasco. It's like a charade. Like, he's angry with the press, and I don't know if he's been drinking. I don't know. He has a bit of a record with that. But, it's like a really bad comedy. You know those movies back in the late 90s or the early 2000s? Those sort of B-rated movies? No, like, maybe even go back to the 1980s, Police Academy or something like that, where the comedy was like over the top. No, I'm not talking about camp, but I'm talking about like really over the top, and it was like cringy. The Trump administration is like that. But imagine if somebody was in a coma and they woke up after 20 years and they were like putting on their TV and they're like, sorry, what sort of weird movie is this I'm watching? It's really dodgy B-rated comedy. It's crap. No, that's reality. What? Put me back in a friggin' coma.
Blood to cheer against Trump. Because you want him not to be successful so bad, you have to cheer against the efficacy of these strikes.
Go ahead, Tom.
His top military man came armed with this video. Not the actual mission, but a test of the bombs, demonstrating their power.
Operation Midnight Hammer was the culmination of those 15 years of incredible work. The air crews, the tanker crews, the weapons crews that built the weapons.
Yeah, but look, I understand. It's a powerful weapon. But until we actually see evidence on the ground, then we don't know if it has been destroyed. But there's also the other problem. The attack, Donald Trump kept talking about attacking. Donald Trump was like, we're going to bomb Iran, or we're willing to use whatever means necessary and all of this. So Trump, in a sense, gave Iran time to move some of their equipment out. Like he was talking about, we're going to give you 2 weeks. And then, of course, he didn't wait the full 2 weeks. He acted a few days later. But they had time to move stuff out. So we don't know. Like, just because you bombed something and you claim everything was destroyed, without someone on the ground to confirm it, well, then why should we believe you? Because Donald Trump doesn't lie. Okay. Peter, thank you so much for that super chat. Don't trust anyone with a name like Pete or Peter. You are the exception. You are the exception. Also, don't trust men with beards. They always have something to hide. Normally, it's the chin. Anyway.
The load crews that loaded it. Here's what we know following the attacks and the strikes on Fordo. First, that the weapons were built, tested, and loaded properly. 2, the weapons were released on speed and on parameters. 3, the weapons all guided to their intended targets and to their intended aim points.
But that's like saying, if my wife asked me, did you get bread from the supermarket? And I said, well, I got in the car, I drove the car to the supermarket, I got out of the supermarket, and I went into the supermarket. Yeah, but did you get the bread? I went to the car, I drove the car to the... Like, okay, but what I want to know is, did you get the bread? You need to believe me. Okay. He had a post-cortical dysphoria, in that conference. I had a bit of trouble reading that. Thanks, Brad.
But Iran's supreme leader says the Americans are exaggerating. He was speaking for the first time since the ceasefire.
The US attacked our nuclear facilities, a matter that is independently worth pursuing for prosecution in international courts. But they failed to do anything significant. The President of America greatly exaggerated what had happened. It became clear that he needed this exaggeration.
Look, I'm not trusting the Ayatollah either. I'm not saying you trust Trump or the Ayatollah, but in order to understand whether the facility was destroyed, we'd need independent investigation. So you'd need at least the independent media to go there first, and then, of course, people from the IEA, the IEA, what was it, IAEA. Those people need to go in and check readings for potential contamination, nuclear waste or whatever, and maybe some fallout. That needs to be done. I'm not going to trust the Iranians, and I'm certainly not going to trust Donald Trump. Like, nobody should trust Donald Trump. Even Donald Trump doesn't trust Donald Trump. I trust no one. No, you're right too. I just wanted to cover that, but it's so insane that it's like you're attacking the media for not believing you when you've built your entire career on lies. It's like Boris Johnson being angry that people don't believe him. Are you suggesting I'm lying? It's like Farage, are you suggesting I'm a lying charlatan? Just because I built my entire career on being a lying charlatan doesn't mean that I'm always a lying charlatan. Maybe, broken clocks and all that sort of stuff. This is a funny story. You've probably already seen it, but I wanted to respond to it because it's funny. So, if you want to go to the United States at the moment, there are some risks to your security because when you arrive, border security, whatever the name is, I forget the name. Border security will investigate your telephone, your mobile phone, and they'll ask to access your social media account to look for anything that could be deemed anti-Trump. And if they find something anti-Trump or anti the Trump administration, you're likely to be deported. So you've probably already seen this. So this was a funny example of something you could be deported over.
Unthinkable in a Western democracy. This week, a young Norwegian tourist detained by ICE at Newark Airport and sent back to Oslo. Why? He had this meme on his phone, Minister.
This was wonderful. It's unfortunate that in the House of Commons you can't use props. I really wish it'd be possible to use props. Maybe somebody could break the rules and use a prop like this. But yeah, this was good.
A meme depicting Vice President J.D. Vance as a baby. I mean, extraordinary, extraordinary. That a young person with this amusing meme on their phone depicting a public person, that this would be used as an excuse to detain him for...
It's like North Korea. You know, can you imagine if you, obviously not to the same extent, but along the same track, maybe we give, hopefully, my sympathies to people in the United States at the moment, hopefully it doesn't continue down the road like North Korea. But that's the direction of traffic where you will not be allowed to insult the dear leader. Otherwise, you end up in a gulag.
5 hours and then deport him back to Oslo. So, Minister, I welcome the Taoiseach's commitment to raise this serious issue with the US Ambassador. But as the line Minister for issuing visas, what can you do to reassure young people here who hope to travel to the US on a J1 visa but are fearful of this treatment?
There's very little I can do about the US immigration system. Like, I'm trying to put rules in the Irish immigration system. I can't control the US immigration system. I think it is regrettable that these new measures are being introduced by the United States. I welcome the fact that the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach have indicated that they think it's inappropriate. We'll mention it with the US authorities. Hundreds of thousands, probably millions of Irish people have a great time on J1 visas. They're still doing it this year. They've done it in the past, and I think it'll continue into the future, Deputy.
Oh my goodness, it's worrying though, isn't it? That you insult the dear leader or the deputy dear leader, and you end up being deported. Yes, I understand the Irish government can do nothing about it, but it would be interesting to be a fly on the wall where if the ambassador is I don't know who the ambassador to Ireland is. I don't know if it's somebody who was appointed before, if Trump replaced them. If it's not a MAGA person, then they would be like, what the fuck can we do? Donald Trump is in charge now. We're sorry. That's probably what the ambassador is saying, to the Irish government. The Irish government is like, Jesus Christ, lads, what the fuck are you doing? It's like, it's Trump, it's not us. If it's a MAGA, they'd be like, how dare you even insult the dear leader? How dare you even consider insulting the dear leader? We will impose whatever restrictions on anyone who insults the dear leader we like. And we will... my hope out of all of this is that AOC becomes the next US president. There's a complete flip. Something I've heard is like, oh no, the Americans would not vote for AOC. She's too young, or she's a woman, or whatever. But I think something that really stuck with me back in 2008, 2007, 2008, just 2008, yes, when Obama won. I remember there was a sign on a street or in a field, I think it was, in Alabama or in Louisiana. It was like, what was it? Hillbillies for Obama. And it was like, even we're sick of Bush. It's like, so I think while many people will say AOC, she's too left wing, or she's a woman, or she's too young, I think many people would be so sick of Trump by the time 2028 comes around, they'd be like, please, anyone, we'd vote for a potted plant over this guy. And it'd be great to have somebody like AOC, somebody who actually cares about ordinary people, who would push policies that protect the most vulnerable in society, would try and undo the damage of Trump. It will take decades to undo the damage of Trump. And it's important that what happens is nothing like Trump can come along again. There needs to be root and branch de-Maganization going on, within the media, not just the Republican Party, but within the media as well. The media have been completely complicit, like Nigel Farage. There is a parallel between MAGA and Reform or Farage. How the media see this as a massive opportunity to make a huge amount of money. Trump is good for business. Farage is good for business. Brad, once again, thank you so much for that super chat. Can someone try and enter the US with a spunk-coated couch picture on their phone, please? It's supposed to be a family show. No, it hasn't been a family show in a long, long time. Thanks, Brad. I think. But EOC kicks ass. Yes, she does. Is a great woman. It will take a war, Max. Hopefully not, Bill. I'm just reading some of the other comments. Okay, let's move on. We're almost at the end of the stream, so I want to just cover a few more things before we finish. So Donald Trump, we'll just stick with one more story with Donald Trump before we go. Vance would take the phone for himself. Yes, he probably would. So Donald Trump is very happy because he's managed to get through a number of policies. Obviously, let's have a look at this clip and then I'll explain what the problem with it is.
It's been an amazing period of time this last hour. There are people elated all over the country. I've seen such happiness and spirit. Sometimes you don't see that, but this case is very important. I was elected on a historic mandate, but in recent months we've seen a handful of radical left judges effectively try to overrule the rightful powers.
Okay, it's not about radical left judges, it's about following the Constitution. You know, the judges are there to uphold the Constitution, they're not radical left.
Of the president to stop the American people from getting the policies that they voted for in record numbers. It was a grave threat to democracy, frankly, and instead of merely ruling on the immediate cases before them, these judges have attempted to dictate the law for the entire nation.
They don't dictate the law, they interpret the law. You're the one who... Congress writes the laws. The president pushes laws forward and Congress votes on them. They don't write the laws. The judges don't write, they interpret the law.
In practice, this meant that if any one of the nearly 700 federal judges disagreed with the policy of a duly elected president of the United States, he or she could block that policy from going into effect or at least delay it for many years, tie it up in the court system. This was a colossal abuse.
Trump is not in charge here. Trump is not the one who's making these decisions. It's somebody else, maybe Stephen Miller, a far-right individual. But Trump is like a mannequin sitting in a car. You know those crash test dummies? He's not actually in charge. He's not running the show. He's just a figurehead. He's just the front man. The real work has been... You can see it with these executive orders. He's just signing stuff. He doesn't know what's actually contained within it. It's like, here's the executive order on, on what is it, MS-13 or whatever, and yeah, okay, whatever. Here's an executive order on this. He signs. He doesn't understand what the executive order is about. Like sometimes he wasn't there a couple of cases where he's like, I didn't know about that. It's the executive order that you sign. Ah, okay. He's not with it.
A power which never occurred in American history prior to recent decades. And we've been hit with more nationwide injunctions than were issued in the entire 20th century together. Think of it, more than the entire 20th century, me.
It's always about him. Poor me. They have it in for me.
I'm grateful to the Supreme Court for stepping in and solving this very, very big and complex problem, and they've made it very simple. I want to thank Justice Barrett, who wrote the opinion brilliantly, as well as Chief Justice Roberts, and Justices Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Thomas. Great people. Thanks for this decision, and thanks to this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with numerous policies that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis. And some of the cases we're talking about would be ending birthright citizenship, which now comes to the fore. That was meant for the babies of slaves. It wasn't meant for people trying to scam the system and come into the country on a vacation. This was, in fact...
Okay, so this is something that's quite alien to Europeans, this idea that when you're born in the country, you automatically become a citizen. So Trump wants to get rid of that, but this is really important for the United States because of the United States is built on immigration. the idea that people would move their children would be born there, they'd be automatically. This is about removing people who are a problem, and it doesn't matter if they're citizens or not. Removing birthright citizenship is a serious. It's a serious problem now. The idea of removing this.
It was the same date, the exact same date, the end of the Civil War. It was meant for the babies of slaves, and it's so clean and so obvious. But this lets us go there and finally win that case, because hundreds of thousands of people are pouring into our country under birthright citizenship, and it wasn't meant for that reason.
Sorry, but you're not. But that does he actually understand what birthright citizenship is? It's like birthright citizenship is a problem because all these people are coming into the country. So what? It's not for the people coming into the country. It's for the people who are born in the country. Or maybe I'm misunderstanding something.
Was meant for the babies of slaves. So thanks to this.
So once again, it's somebody was speaking to Trump. Somebody said it was for slaves, sir, Mr. President. It was about slaves and the babies of slaves. And then Trump is like, well, that was a long time ago. Yeah. So that's why we should get rid of it. Okay. What should I say to people if they ask me? Say about babies of slaves. Oh, okay. And would that work? Hey, what have we given you bad advice so far? Oh my goodness. It's like, once again, he's not in charge. He's just a conduit. The real people like Gurkha or Stephen Miller or some other individuals in the background, the ones who wrote this 2025, Project 2025, they're the ones in the driving seat. And Trump is the front man. Trump doesn't know what he's doing. He just regurgitates whatever he's told. He argues with people, but it's normally foreigners, so they don't care about that. But Trump doesn't know what's going on. And this is... Trump, I think it was Vosh, the YouTuber, said, Trump is probably the least evil person in the Trump administration. That's how bad the situation is. Trump is the least evil person because he doesn't know what he's doing. He's not doing these things because he actually hates people who are born in the United States. He wants to get rid of. He's just going along, whatever. Stephen Miller told me this is a good idea, so that's all I do. My goodness. Okay, guys, we're almost at the end of the stream, so I want to say thank you so much to everyone who came on. Thanks to everyone who sent a super chat. Great to see some new people on as well, also from the United States. So before we go, I want to say have a great... Wait a minute. There's a comment here. Look up Anchor Babies Max, effing US Tories. I heard about that as well. Thanks so much, Gareth. This idea of anchor babies, that they use this term anchor babies, where people would come in and they'd have a baby and then they wouldn't be able to be kicked out. So it's about sending, and I think Hogan or whatever his name is, the border czar, he was talking about, we just deport all families. We don't care. We're going after one person, we'll deport the entire family. They don't care about the consequences. So guys, have a great weekend. I will see you on Tuesday, same bad time, same bad channel. Thanks again to everyone. Before we go, we have our one for the road. So I hope you enjoy this, which is suitable for the time. Thanks so much to Fro42. Thank you so much. The Supreme Court of the US, Clarence Thomas, supports the convicted felon. There we go. So, a justice who supports criminals. And Donald Trump is probably criticizing them for supporting people who are not criminals. Anyway, hope you enjoy this. Okay, that's a little bit too loud. Sorry about that.
Welcome to Broken News. People in the UK who have a salaried job and expect a half-decent quality of life, like in the olden days, are being told to grow up and get at least 3 more jobs. The message comes from self-appointed lifestyle guru and hereditary peer, Baroness Arabella de Chauncey Trevelyan St John Smythe. Our reporter has more.
Time was, up until roughly the 1980s, a family with a sole breadwinner could comfortably afford a decent house, a modest car, and support a growing family. But for reasons that Broken News is not going to bother investigating, that dream is now absolutely dead, and people are being told by the super rich to drastically lower their expectations, which seems totally reasonable. One of the country's richest people, and therefore someone we should really listen to, Baroness Arabella says she thinks that people should just get off their stained council house sofas and bloody work, and that she learned valuable lessons after starting a bespoke lobbying firm, an equine wellness retreat, a central London art gallery and a modelling agency in Dubai, all with less than £5 million in seed funding from her parents. And while all those businesses failed without impacting on her family's wealth thanks to a government bailout, her words are being backed up by one of Britain's most respected businessmen. Private equity bigwig Toby Clonsterford Booth, who last year took over the family firm from his late father Lord Maxwell Clonsterford Booth, says Lady Arabella is absolutely right. The 37-year-old, who made his name from asset stripping and plundering public services for profit, says working people should consider stopping their Netflix subscriptions so that they have enough for a horrible-looking new build in the northern town of Leeds, for example. A bargain. Well, his words have been echoed by billionaire man of the people, petrochemical magnate Sir Remington Jackcliffe, who says the idea of leisure time is childlike, outdated and fantastical. He's tweeted that if you want to see your kids in the evening or go out at the weekend, you should expect to have to work evenings and weekends. He also has another solution for low-income families. Just keep working. He suggests until you're 79 or however long you people live these days. Well, some charities which represent poorer people have called the comments insulting, ignorant and incredibly unsympathetic. Those people are being told to shut up and fuck off. Back to you.
Thank you. What a lovely story. That's all from Broken News. You're up to date.
And I want to say the final thank you to Brad. Thank you so much, Brad, for the super chat at the end, who says, Arabella de Chauncey Trevelyan, yet Boris Johnson at the moment. Oh, please do not leave me with images of Boris Johnson doing the business. It's nightmare fuel. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a great weekend if you can after that super chat. As always, stay safe, take care, and good night.